Rick is going to give us about 45 minutes or so of a plenary. We've asked him to sort of speak around his experience in the computing for social good space, and what maybe as a community that is concerned about data for good, how that, you know, what have they learned? What can we pull in? What might be useful? And what bad or good experiences have they learned? JD, can I get you to go over to the piano and get them to stop pianoing for our plenary? So because we want to try to say something on schedule, because we do actually have lunch coming in soon, I'm going to turn this over to Rick now as we sort of finish gathering.
Thanks. Yeah, I used lunch as the thing, but I just said the sooner I get this over with, my last activity, then I become you and I don't have to worry about it. Yeah, so the sooner we finish this, for online, we get a couple of people sitting down, so it's all good. A slightly different talk, and since this is recorded, I've been trying to decide whether to say this, but heck, I'll go for it. Normally, you know, you give this research talk 20 minutes. I practice some, it's not memorized. I'm winging this one. The slides are meant to keep me on order. I didn't practice. I just wrote down 12:20. We'll be done by 12:20 one way or the other. That's the 45 minutes I've been asked to do. It's a little bit different, as you're going to see, and it does get at these goals. And mostly the slides are to keep me on track, right? In this sense, to help me. So here's kind of like my first one. For the people online too, what's the difference between ChatGPT and a politician? What is the difference between ChatGPT and a politician? Yeah, politicians know when they're lying. This slide I just added a couple minutes ago. I do work at a Jesuit institution, St. Xavier, founding of the Jesuits, got into education. There's a whole thing around that. We're not going to get in that, but they do have the how ought to act. But the thing that just buzzed into my mind real quick was, and a lot of these, the slides I added are inspired by Darva. I thought she did a great job with the questions that she had. They have this, we'll meet students at your door, their door, right? But they're going to walk out our door. And I will say the Jesuits, and Carl brought this up too, of the education from the church. Honestly, what they want you to do is understand the church's position, and the church's position on computing and data at this point. We're not back in the ancient times, is all supportive. So it doesn't come up really in the computer science classes for me at all. But it's pretty open. But like a lot of these religious-based institutions, I'm just going to plug in. I'm not Catholic. In fact, my dad was. I'm Muggle blood, and he didn't care too much for how Catholicism's going. But if you can't get behind what sort of like the Jesuits are trying to do for education in general, and a lot of these institutions, I would claim you probably need to reevaluate your own educational moral values. Education, to somewhat as we know it today, kind of goes back to St. Ignatius in the founding, and part of that meeting students at their door is they were educating peasants, and you couldn't go in blasting all these like theoretical, like big time stuff. You had to bring it to the students and then try to educate and elevate them. And I get it. That's what you guys all do. Carl keeps thinking I'm being negative on the way to the conference. Not at all. Right. I had this talk, and then all of a sudden realized, oh, I'm speaking today, and that kind of changes things around. So it made me think about in an attempt to be clever of, well, what if we had this sort of neural network type? You know, this is the decoder part of the transformer architecture, and we're going to feed in a bunch of literature. I'm going to sort of do some queries, and the values are going to be coming. What comes out? And I thought this was a way. Initially, I was thinking, what are the overlaps, right? This is a clever way of saying, what's the Venn diagram between the data science, the CSGED movement? So what are we going to feed in? We'll feed in a bunch of things. You know, what's out there? Computers in society, the popular press, computing education. Since this is an education in some sense workshop, focus on that. Professional codes of conduct, the CSGED movement, and D4G4ED. That's very limited because that's not my background, not my area. And you reinforced, you guys know way more than I do, but that's what we're going to do. And so the first thing I'd like to do is go a little bit at a popular press. We'll start with something you absolutely know. And then here's a thought. You can see I'm a very family-oriented person that my daughter suggested to me once, and I laid into it. So Alan Turing, we all sort of know who he is, right? Many people consider him. This is actually a quote that I didn't attribute. Father of computer science and artificial intelligence. If you're not sure where this goes, you're in the mathematician or the economics community. My favorite biologist is she's somewhere. There she is. You know, talk to me offhand, but we can talk why Alan Turing is that. What he is really known for is working on breaking the code for the Enigma cipher of the Germans in World War II, and that's the part that was made in to movie. And there's a picture of the device that they built for early computing, and it was based on his work as computational, right? The theory of computing. I happen to attribute to Alan, Church. Because I think he got there first, and we're researchers. Now I'm going on and on and on, but Alan Turing stuff is just so much more intuitive than the lambda calculus and mu recursive functions are clean for those that follow that. So what my daughter suggests to me is, wasn't he the first one really to use computing for the social good? I mean, isn't stopping a war, a good thing? And it's like, so I'll pass that along. There's some reason I'm doing this history. Bear with me a little bit. We get the ENIAC, 1946. It's kind of really the first commercial computer that's out there. We're not quibbling who's first. That doesn't matter. They sold 40 of them. You get the UNIVAC. At this point, it's really general. They sold 46 of them. Here's an interesting something that happened. It would be for today's world, right? It with 5% of the vote tallied, it predicted the landslide winner in the 1952 election, and it was a surprise. People didn't think it was going this way. Back then, it was like aren't computers cool? Think about the world today. We all live in this environment. We get 1954, IBM now is really getting into this. The 704 is an early 136 sold. The 709 now in 1957. The dates are important, right? 54, 57. You got this 2800 sold. The tidbit on this one, Fortran and Lisp were both developed originally for this IBM 709. The cool thing at this point, these are vacuum tube computers still. It wasn't until IBM did the 7090 is IBM's version of the 709 that was now transistorized. Okay, we're starting getting out of that. PDP ones, for those who started that way, I'm old enough. They're not around yet. Okay, so we're right at this 1957, 1959 time frame. Okay. 1958, we have Edmund Berkeley, big supporter, probably the first computer magazine, Computers and Automation that you can find out there. And he's writing under a pseudonym, and again, you can read, but for some of this, I want to capture it out there. He talks about, are computers and automation a curse or a blessing? This was his article. And what he was doing is, he was kind of the editor in some sense. He's trying to get the discussion started in this magazine. And we get this, what is the social responsibility of the scientists doing this? Okay, so 1958, and we've got some people starting to question what's happening here. I'm going to go through, there was also this panel discussion at what's the big ACM conference at that time. And you can kind of, you get the gist of what's happening here, right? What are the social problems? with this computing automation at this point. 58 is right about when computer science really isn't a term at this point, right? For those, computers were humans, and Alan Turing's day, when he talked about computers, he's talking about a human. One of his grad students used the word computor, OR, to try to do a differentiation. I just highlighted these again. You can read. We're at this automation. Where are we going? The next one I happen to like because I can throw in a tidbit of okay, so the idea basically is, these scientists are not knowing. Talk to me offhand. I'm a good friend with somebody who was the head of nuclear arms research at Los Alamos. The equivalent of Oppenheimer on the other side, and they knew what they were doing. The thing was, the article goes on in this one to basically say, no, the scientists are good. It's just the perception. And this comes up a lot with what we do, right? Of the perception. I was in a CSGED meeting. I happened to mention to somebody once, well, there's a perception. And the person came back to me, a person more knowledgeable than I am, said, that's not perception, that's reality. It's not all bad. Okay, same conference, same person saying, look, 10 years ago, we're worried, it's doomsday, the earth's falling apart, we're ruining everything. And, it hasn't come out. Again, here it followed up the next year. I like this quote because this one sort of gets at, we have a responsibility. And this was eventually then codified. Now I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, but in the ACM code of ethics. There's a lot of different codes of ethics, data science, IEEE. I'm most familiar with ACM. But this is we have an obligation to tell the public, to inform the public and include them. All right. I don't get up every day and do this, please, but this is something to keep in mind. Here we are back 1959. It's recognized. And now hopefully this is why I did the history of computing a little bit. We're still in the early days and people are already talking about this. Now what I try to do is a little bit of, how far back in real data science could I go? A few years ago, the image is current just for this, but it seems to me, yes, there's a lot of things. You guys are more knowledgeable, but we started doing imaging, things like this. It's not really that old, but the parallelism here, to make it explicit for you, is, first you got this good stuff. So here's the good. I'm giving you the good of what's happening, right? Everything you all are doing. I guess I did the first one, medicine, but somebody here is doing the DNA, RNA work. I mean, fantastic. Now you get this 2 years later, we knew the algorithm got it exactly wrong, right? This is not perception. This is out in the public. This is the case that compares the young Black African-American youth that got caught basically in a very petty crime, immediately has no prior record, versus a white male person who had previous records. If you're not familiar, you can go read the cases, but previous record, the crime was huge compared to this. And basically the African-American youth got jail time and the white person was let go. Okay. Why? Well, an algorithm said that's what the judge should recommend it to the judge. That's what they do. There's a lot of data, how people just follow, right? The anecdote of, what do you do to fix your computer? You pour water on it. Some people actually do that. So we need to be careful with what algorithms recommend, because we start saying, well, the computer's saying it, it must be right. Again, this is one of these separate us ivory tower people. I don't think we are, but we are definitely different than what's happening in the rest of society. I did this one simply because it was May 22nd of this year. New York Times people, really clever. They repeat this study of picture identification. What happened is primates were being distinguished. Sometimes it's doing African Americans as gorillas, right? I mean, just let's be blunt. And what did Google? And by the way, it's not just Google, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon. They all get these problems. What did they do? Okay, they took this back out. What these people went back in and they said they're going to fix the problem. They don't. The problem's not fixed, right? As of a month ago. So I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's hard, but keep this in mind. The person here, Jackie, is the person who found the problem. It was his picture. And this is a recent quote, no faith in AI. Now he's probably being dramatic, but we should keep that in mind. I came across this one on big data. Johnson goes way back, a person, but you may know this study. You got it, of 600,000 Facebook users. Can we do their emotional content? I'll skip right to the research. 3 groups. They filtered news feeds negative, positively, randomly. And it turns out you can influence the mood. One of the things that was in the background for this one's interesting. It was counter to what people thought and the researchers thought. They thought the more positive you would be, that would make your friends feel negative. You have a better life, the Styx song, Grand Illusion, and, don't worry about your neighbor. It turns out our technologies, or people use our technologies, can change society. I did not think about propaganda yesterday until somebody brought it up on our table. The example they gave is, just think of this as propaganda. 1 + 1 = 3. That there are people out there trying to teach ChatGPT that. Well, what happens when that sort of becomes a movement, right? I always thought, whatever side of the political spectrum you're on, the crazies are sincere. My stepdad's sincere. He believes it. I think he's misguided, but he's sincere. He's not out to purposely deceive. What happens when people are out to purposely deceive? I asked the question, that's all. Curriculum. Here's the thing I probably know the most about. And here's where this fit in. Remember what we said. We got 1958. The computers have been out a few years. Here we are. The first real curriculum in computer science was a committee that got together, 63. I wish I were there, but I wasn't. I'm old, but not that old. And this kind of led to what I think is the first real report on computing and education, what we would call today a special education issue in communications at ACM. Papers, it's reviewing what happened at that previous conference. I've got a lot of mileage out of just using this as background stuff. It is in these papers where computer science got caught on. They did a survey of universities teaching this thing, and they basically asked what's the most proper name for this. And there's a lot of different suggestions, but computer science rose to the top. And to some degree, they didn't invent the term, but this might be where it got codified. The key points I'm trying to get here, a lot of text to read. But there's no mention of the social good, ethics, society in the curriculum. And the key point of the next couple slides is when it does come up, we can educate society. Society needs to wake up and understand what computers are doing. But it's not educating computer scientist graduates that they're the people who have a say in this. So that's kind of, I'm realizing that I'm not paying attention to time, 52, great. All right. So that leads to that special issue. Again, key point, no focus, right? Maybe it was implicit. Maybe they thought this, right? What really happens from there is you get the first real publication again, where you got the idea. Since 1958, it's been out there. Educators are just catching up. Okay, behind the times. I think data science after today, I feel way better that you all are in a really good spot, right? But notice some of the problems in data science happened before the data science curriculum. Okay, so all right. it really leads to the first CS68 official curriculum, as expected because of what was happening in churning there. There's no mention, except they do categorize students as to who will be doing computing. There's the biologists, they mentioned that, right? There's the computing people, there's the business people. And then they mentioned, well, what is the real societal impact? Well, even the arts, the foreign languages. I mean, today we understand computers affect this, but they were saying, hey, these people should realize that computing is going to change this impact. You know, I find it curious, right? We're basically, we're members of this community. I wasn't there. We're saying, okay, you guys need to wake up and do this, and it's cool, but us, we're not worrying about it. Interesting enough, and Ben Schneiderman did a, he's the first reference that most of us can find on computing for the social good course, right? He didn't call it at that point in time, but here it is, 1971. And he's basically putting his foot down saying this is important. And he describes a course. So he should be acknowledged. We get curriculum 78. ACM does this every 10 years, then IEEE. Yes, IEEE computer science was brought in, and now AAAI has 2 representatives on the newest curricular committee. We get CS9. I don't know if my next slide this, but interesting enough, it's curriculum 78, where CS1, CS2 is born as the first 2 programming courses. The first 6 were required, and then they gave some options. Here's computers in society and with the outcomes at this point. But it also has this, there's debate. Okay, it's going on. You got a set of people. No way, this is not part of the computing curriculum. It's not what we do. It's not that it's necessarily not important, but this is the, you teach this in the social sciences department. You teach this in, okay, other places. But somebody got something in to basically say, if you're not going to cover this in the curriculum, then we strongly recommend you do this. That was that aside I told you on CS1, CS2. And then here's a couple comments. After this 78, people started criticizing back and basically saying, hey, they're not paying attention to it. So the way I would characterize it is, in the background, a wave is brewing, okay, of people are starting to do things, get organized. These people on these slides are what I would call the early pioneers. I've had the pleasure, because of some of this work, to meet some of these people. They're retired in general, but they show up at these people. Sorry, they show up at SIGC events and things of that age, like Dan Martin and Johnson. You can see in the background, people are starting to make these arguments. Don Goddard, I threw some slides in somewhere. Maybe next for him. Oh, here it is. Okay, because this came up, right? Just added a slide. Thank you, Dharma. He's made an argument that when we try to say what's good, we should probably avoid the philosophers. I'm not saying he's right or wrong, but he said what we basically teach students is, for several thousand years, humans haven't been able to agree on this topic, and all you're going to do is begin to confuse them. And as Dustin pointed out at our table, it sort of leads to teach a practical ethics, if I understood you correctly, right? So we're not saying don't understand these theories. Joe, my daughter, again, I like her. Obviously, I'm biased, but she sort of, did this. The opposite of doing no harm isn't doing good, right? We have to intentionally want to do good and teach our students to head in that direction. I don't know what good is. I mean, that's a different, she's doing her thesis on this now. Maybe I'll send her Dharma's way. I am rating the Maslow hierarchy. It came up in my mind that mapping it to human needs might be an interesting way. So that's just an aside. You can talk to me. A slide I added real quick. Time 11:57. Great. All right. So now we're curriculum 91. We have these. It's coming into the curriculum, and it's required now. Right. There's these things called. There's these 9 strands. And there's papers out there, add the 10 strand, add this as a requirement. This is important. That's basically just getting some quotes at what's happening in curriculum 91. So we got a breakthrough. The disappointment is 1991, here we are in 2023. This led to what's the ImpactCS studies. They got a set of 3 papers out there. This is where, like, I'm getting a little like in where my slides are, but there are some questions that were answered as that wave was growing. And recommendations, and Martin has a good paper, don't be apologetic, and the suggestions to really do the curriculum, and as much as I'm promoting this, my curriculum doesn't look exactly like this, is you have an introductory course to set the framework. But the problem with the introductory courses is they don't have enough knowledge in the content area. So there's the argument against it. Don Gotterborn was an argument on you do the capstone focused CSG course. And then Miller's work back then is you do it across the curriculum. And this all led to a consensus of you really need to do all 3 of those things. What Regis, as a side, does really well is across the curriculum. And we have an ethics-based course in the end. And but what we don't do well is we have no introductory course. And quite frankly, if I have the pleasure ever or the honor of meeting these people, I would ask them, they talk about what are the difficulties of getting this in like we've been doing. I'd ask them the difficulty of where do I get 3 credits in? Right? When I start with a calc 1 and a programming 1 to accept transfer, if nothing else, from community colleges, how do I fit in yet another course? This is what's influenced discussions at our table of saying, well, wow, we do teach a course of meaningful lives. It's taught here at Trinity, I learned too. And boy, if I could get that humanities department course focused in my way. And the humanities, they respond, they're not anti, it's not a fight, but they'll say, sure, give us a faculty member to teach it. I don't have faculty members to teach it in the sense of just time, right? I'll do it. But if I do it, then I don't teach computation theory. I don't have somebody else who can teach computation theory. It's just that type of game. You all play it. I learned Victoria is a new student. Sorry to point to, students are new. And I said, look, these are your headaches. We all do these grandiose things, but there are these headaches when you're faculty members. By the way, I didn't give you this advice. When somebody comes on and says you can be the chair, the answer is no, thank you. Yeah. These papers, there's an ITSE 97 working group, and they start doing these examples. They're trying to give, how can we do this? How can we structure? I think if you read these, they're interesting historically, but there's not much more insight than being what's said here today. I like, because I know Flo, met her. She kind of joins the fight. We call this like the torch passing. You can see the different generations sort of rediscovering and becoming interesting in these areas. We're in the 2000s now. ITSE 2010 working group. This is when the term computing for the social good is actually born, meaning it's out there in the literature, right? It codified as an idea. And again, it's trying to redirect and push that this has to be included in the curriculum. If you speak with these people and these authors and read their writings, as students, I would normally say you're paying real careful attention, which is hard, right? Because I'm blasting at you 100 miles an hour. 1991. Now we're 2010, 20 years later. And they're pushing. And I think Dharma the other day answered it for me, right? Sometimes people just say something, and it's like, I don't want to misquote her, but it was, remember, research is slow, incremental with a lot of hands. Social good into the curriculum, in the education is going to be slow, incremental with a lot of hands, right? We just keep pounding away. Data science might be this way, right? Think of data science. You've got the history. We have the history, right? I studied machine learning years ago, and of computer science. But if we mark whatever date you want to mark, 2010 is the beginning, or you're almost looking, it's going to be 2040 before that needle is really bending. Now, maybe it'll bend faster exponentially. You got an ITSE 2012 working group. And what's coming out of this group, well, one, the CSGED term is born in this group. But what the big shift was for this working group was the stuff that I keep hammering. I know my table has it, which is we need to do this in the first course. whatever the first course is, you've got to make it about computing for the social good in some way. And I have some support data coming up in a bit, but the basic idea is you don't want to turn students off who want to do this, okay, work. So that's kind of the focus that came out of here. If you're noticing now, I'll call it the Mikey Crusade. This is Mikey Goldweber. He's been my colleague. I've been honored. I've learned a lot from him, so I acknowledge. He sort of picks this up, and this is he was a bit radical back in the day, and then he realized this is his way of saving the world, right? One step at a time, is trying to get education moving this way. So based on those ITSE working groups, he starts giving workshop in 2013, 2015 in New Zealand. It's kind of sort of a bit like what we did the first day. It's just how can we introduce these different levels of computing for the social good. Check time. Now, self-serving aside, how did I get into this? My background, I'm not going to talk about it, but it's intelligent tutoring systems. But back in 2010, I realized, I had an epiphany, not connected to any community. We were talking about nursing students and how they do role playing. In industry, I had worked in a role playing tutoring system that actually did better benefits than humans role playing with even the primitive technology, and realized, oh, we can maybe teach ethics in this way. This one actually focused on, it was the nursing students, just to give you a feel, was the different roles that actually people play, right? So there's patient advocates, there's people who are advocating for insurance, there's the doctor, so it was to try to get the nursing students to think of all the stakeholders, in today's words, I didn't use it back then, involved. And I also started becoming interested in curricular stuff. In 2014 in the graduate department, somebody made the mistake of hiring my daughter as an affiliate faculty. I had nothing to do with that. But the moment they did it, it was like, okay, I know what I'm going to do with her. And I basically told her to create me a course, ethical leadership in computer science for our majors. Again, I've said this yesterday, it doesn't matter who it is, but they bring a different perspective. The negative side is somebody told me, what happens when your lawyer daughter leaves? Because we don't have another lawyer person there to do this course. But what I basically told her is, don't look at the course we have right now in the IT ethics. Don't create me that. I don't want that course. I can talk a little bit more about that. And that led to another quick paper, and it's the 2019 one, when I learned, oh my God, there's a whole community out there doing this. We are not this island, right? So again, I'm not an expert, right? I don't want to give you this, it's got like, I did all this work and all this stuff. I used to, when marketing said, how do we get students? I said, every world problem is going to be solved by a computer scientist, even if it's somebody using Microsoft Word to write the Palestinian peace accord. It's going to be involved. I wasn't thinking AI. This led to a lot of work with Mikey. From Mikey, I was able to meet Lisa. I botch her name every time I say it, but here's a little Lisa side. She did computers in society, computing for the Go to book. So it's a little dated now. And you can see the idea. I'll just point out two of the Peruvian Indies one is really good. It was done by Alice Sinclair. So now I meet Alice Sinclair, who's now the president of SIGC. Somebody was asking me earlier, how do you get involved? You start volunteering and you start meeting these people, and you get that whole imposter syndrome, right? And then you realize, okay, they're just like me, or I'm just like them. The only thing is they worked hard and I sat on my butt watching TV or something. This one's sort of interesting for 2 points. I'll just say everything we teach students about software engineering is wrong in this environment, right? They go by the village elder. You got to convince the village elder that this is good for the society. And when the village elders are convinced it's good, what did it do? Now there's complications in this, but here's how simple this is. They only had potatoes and alpaca, llama fur, right, to trade. That's their existence. And they basically, these will be my words, they get ripped off all the time. Okay. They got internet in, and at any given time now, they know what the price of alpaca fur is trading on the markets in the cities and the world market. So they no longer get ripped off by the middlemen. people. That's kind of like the gist of that one. You can read through these. Some of these are a little dated now at this point. The sea turtle ones are good, right? Tracking the little sea turtles that everybody loves, and and trying to make their life better. Lisa was really good on something that I missed that I should have said. I'll go back as you'll read. Was okay. Early days, there's very much computing history, legal issues. There's one I'm missing, but the shift and some of the people I'm working with, Mikey, Lisa, myself, we're trying to shift to what you guys are doing, computing for the social good. It's not just the ethics. It's not just the legal. It's not, purposely, intentionally do this. And that's why she wrote this book, sort of. The last chapter is she's a consultant now. She actually gave up faculty. She can help you with NSF, right, grant writing stuff, things like that. But that's that last one. Lisa's really cool. We're all humble in our own way, but I always point this out for her. Her paper was the best paper elected 50 years of computer science education. If she basically did this sort of, what are misconceptions that students have? Here's sort of 4 broad themes. I was afraid somebody would ask me this, so I reread it last night just to make sure. But it is an interesting paper. I especially like the last one, right? Students can't trace code. That led to a couple more stuff. Now, here's what's happening today. How are we growing the community? These are the events that we're holding at this time. So each one we get together, you can be involved, and we try to think out what's the next thing to sort of happen. So we're pushing this since SIGCASH generally presents at SIGC. It's not just education. So I'm preaching to the choir here. If all you do is teach the 5 Python subjects, you haven't done a good job as an educator. Now, this is our opinion. This is what we're trying to do. The hard part is, right, convincing students that that's not what you need to do. All right. So you can see what this is. These are just events that we have. What's happening now? Here we are. Oh my God, 30 years later. Here's what I think are some big contribution that's going to come. Every knowledge area in the CS curriculum knowledge unit, we're up to the Gamma version at this point, will have a social good aspect. If all you have is a hammer, right? So all we got is curriculum. It's all we can do. Okay. So, but the idea is, and here's the example I always use. If you're going to teach Dijkstra's algorithm, you need to be talking about social good right there. No matter what you teach, you need to be talking about social good. You just keep, forgive me, pounding the students. And by osmosis, we're kind of hoping that it transfers. That's not the only thing we do. All right, the code. This is just real quick. There is an ACM code of professional ethics you read through. I encourage, it's an online version. Read it. It's kind of really cool. Ethical principle number 1, everybody's a stakeholder. Right? You shouldn't build software just for your stakeholders, everybody in society. Another one is we have a responsibility, as I said, to do. There's do no harm. There's kind of cool things. There's privacy, security stuff. It's a fun read. Did we learn anything? A lot of this I sort of said in some sense we know already. Women, underrepresented minorities. This is not the NC WIT study, but you can follow up. National Center Women in Technology. Follow up, right? That it's a turnoff. In fact, the first one is the best one, right? CS is a negative predictor, or social activism is a negative predictor. So again, this is kind of like why we're doing this a little bit. The last quote, I got 60% of majors. This data is a little bit older, but they decide right then they're not going to do it. Right? Somebody wrote a paper. Why is there 4X? Why do people continue to do sociology? I'll pick on psychology real fast. When I became chair, there's only 76 jobs in psychology in Colorado every year. CU alone graduates 760. Right? Now, interpret the data you want. I'm not saying a psychology degree is not good. That's not what I just said. I just said you're not going to be a psychologist. Okay, you become a computer scientist, you'll be a computer scientist. So what if we're turning these students off? Okay. Broadening position participation came from the data science curricular stuff. I looked up some data on this one. Okay, you can decide for yourself. Is the answer computing for the social good or not in this? But why are women and underrepresented minorities not doing data science. I mean, there's more reasons than just social good, but can social good be the attraction to broaden this participation? There's stuff out there that I learned from, you know, diverse teams or essentially better teams. They find financially, right? So here's the corporate angle, right? If we produce more diverse graduates, you actually make more money if you're in the corporate world. I already said that one, so we're good on this. We've also done some, it speaks to what we want to do, right? The one, I don't know if I have a slide coming on this one. Regis itself advertises that computer science graduates from Regis make more money than, on average, than any other graduate of colleges in Colorado, and they're all good, which is surprising to me. As an educator, I don't want that. Right? I want to know what they did. Our top graduate just worked for the healthcare industry. Tenure, we talked about a little before, that would help journals to publish in this area. The data repository one is everybody wants data repository, all these examples. There's a lot of work early on in ACM that nobody uses these things. I threw this slide in real fast just because everybody went, oh, my most recent paper, you know, I get how it's interpreted, interpret the data you want. This is required course in computing for the social good, okay, or ethics. It had to be a technology course, not a general ed course, right? Here's data, 500 US institutions. You have 30% have an early course, 9% late course, 40%. All right, so while everybody may address it elsewhere, I'm just saying this is a required course. Here is it broken down. I was interested in what ABET versus non-ABET does. You can see the data, talk to me. It's loads of data. I've had lots of discussions, even with Carl, you know, the interpretation of data is right the fun side. I'm not saying anything other than per se, I collected this data and I have lots of it. Read the literature that's out there. I just try to give you some of it. Get involved, CSGED. We're close. Yep. We run, so CSGED runs an affiliated event every year. That's competitive, so I can't say that's going to happen. We do our bid, and one thing is we do have some money to rent the hotel room, but we may not always get that. The HFOS that I talked about yesterday, open humanitarian open source, they've been running at the same time. It used to be a combined event. We tend to get a complimentary sister session at CSGED. This is CSGED. We do for CSGED specifically virtual drop-in events. I wish I could tell you it's whenever we get enough motivation to say, hey, we haven't had one in a while. We need to bring the community together. We're trying to work on, we call it a mentorship model, but we don't like the term, more of like you go birding together where we each contribute. Again, not to point you out, Victoria, but this is what went off in my mind at this point of we try to get everybody there. What are you bringing? You do not have to be an expert. You can be brand new to this, but you bring something to this community because it's not mentoring mentee. It's we're all out looking for, oh, I see that. I know that. Okay. So we do an annual showcase event that has real panel discussions, things of that nature. There's a work in progress stuff that gets presented virtually. It came up this morning. I didn't have it on the slide, but I'll plug computers in society. I can tell you right now at this moment, if it's anything close to computers in society and relevant, it'll get published because I'm the chief editor. Why? Technically, it's a newsletter. Right? It's not peer reviewed, right? Worst case, we present it as an opinion, and this is your opinion. All right. So, could top it all off, say 3 minutes, Carl, here we go. I do want to thank, right? ACM's been really good. If the door's open, just walk through it, okay? We're all volunteers, and all we did is volunteer. Right, a lot of you, it's not easy because, and we spoke to this a little bit in our quick breakfast table. To the degree that I can understand and be empathetic to the underrepresented in the room, no, we don't look like you. But the biggest way to change that is volunteer. Okay, come. We are receptive. We will figure out, and then all of a sudden, you all become the face of this. Whomever you are, whatever your background is. Of course, we thank the big Midwest Big Data Hub. I put your grant in here, just acknowledge it. I don't have that grant, but that's, hey, we're all here today. Taxes are the key to civilization. Sorry for that plug. So, pay it, and guess what? You come to these events. Trinity Christian College, of course, for coming. And then thank you all. I should do yesterday's Dharma's one. I need to fill up 2 more minutes, because if I fill 2 minutes, there are no questions. So thanks. And you certainly can bring them offline. So yeah, thank you again. I'm sorry. I put the first slides, just a technical thing for everybody. The question was slides. The first set's up there. I'll throw these set of slides out there too. I didn't do it earlier because I'm changing them as we go. Please.
Poverty, yeah, I'll repeat it real quick. So you talked about two.
The questionnaire
issues.
was focusing on the good, and then issues, right, that data science is creating, right, and how do we focus? I mean, I think, yeah, everything is, for me, right. I wouldn't say a split, but it's come up a couple times in this Dharma called these observations, right? So it's just my observation of, I focused on the word you. I very much, for the most part, did in this one, trying to play the role of educating students, and we're trying to get our students to think, right? To project. Again, I'm very big on, I've tried to, in my column, opinions, go Zuckerberg, which people told me don't do, right? Because I'm just a fly, but I wish he would like swat at this fly. And the whole idea on that one, what triggered me again was, I don't know him. I trust what he says he's doing. I'm not calling into question, but nowhere in his education did someone ever ask him, and I kind of said this one yesterday, project, right? Maybe someone should have told him, think about what you're doing in a different way, right? I mean, it could go wrong. Or another way to do this is, in a certain sense, if you want to see, if you wanted to see him squirm to some degree, and I'm not commenting on him. I'd probably do the same thing in his position. When he's got to testify for Congress, that's huge. And again, people don't realize businesses exist because of we the people at the state level. State has the right to shut any business down for basically any reason. Okay, you can go fight the 14th Amendment, the Declaration, right? But this is kind of terrifying to CEOs in a certain way, and you sort of don't want this happening. So why say that? Right? Again, remember, these are my opinion now, observation of just, all we do is ask our students to think about these issues. So I think if it's important to what you're saying, I mean, I've avoided, because of this educational side, but a lot of things of when we get a climate change, right? There is definitely a privileged and unprivileged, right? And the unprivileged are getting affected way more than the privileged at this point in time. And so there's just huge amounts of stuff. But again, I am just very much, I loved my education at every step. It never came up. I went into the working world not thinking, I was the geek who's like, I'm going to build this best product and do this stuff that's the coolest way. And I both worked in research and real production level stuff. I go into academia and I'm like the normal all of you experience. I'm just trying to get my act together. And it was only after a number of years when, I started to, maybe I grew up, right, of saying, I can have an impact on these students by just asking these questions. And then you learn, oh my God, I'm not the first one that thought about this. And that's why I did the presentation I did today for you. You know, it's all dated, it's out there, but just keep in mind a lot, you know, we start talking about things like, should there be a capstone class? This has been debated 30, 40 years ago. I'm not saying you have to follow it. And I'm not saying, you know, but you get the idea of what I'm getting at, right? People have thought about these things and have collected data in some cases. A lot of it's anecdotal. So that was the idea. So again, I'm going on and on and on, but I hope you get like the gist of, you know, this is how I'm viewing it at this point. And then here in this one, to the degree that we would say data science, business analytics is new with this technology. It's like, can we not maybe repeat these mistakes of the past? But that's too strong to put it, right? I mean, mistakes, it's not fair. But again, the public perception at this moment of big data, I mean, you go for mine. I've written, I think it's an existential crisis for the human race. And if nothing else, I was saying this, there's some people out there proposing that 70% of all jobs can go away. So what if it succeeds in the next year and 70% of all jobs are going away? Would we survive? I mean, yeah, probably, right? Because there's different ways to, you know, it's somewhat a local, it could be global crisis. It's probably not completely extinction, but imagine the upheaval that has. Now, I don't know what else to do. My most recent opinion was simply, we can't handle this for what it's worth any better than we handle nuclear weapons, biological weapons. And I was trying to get the people like to pause for AI stuff, which I think is all well and good. But we need to think more globally than that. And again, pick whoever your favorite bad actor is at this point at the country level. If we can't stop them from building a nuclear weapon, we certainly can't stop them from using AI in any way they want. So the best we can do is try to be prepared and say, what's the defenses for that? Within a company, like within a country, an organization, and I'll end, like I just said, sure, there's laws, right? You break the law and you get punished. But what if there's no real way to punish, right? We punish with economic sanctions. I'm not getting into the whole crisis, but you get it, right? I mean, so my opinion is AI though. It's the cat's out of the bag. Now, what can we do? We can educate our students to know the cat's out of the bag, to know, to think about these problems. So thank you.